The fundamental challenge is one of a structural one, where you have retirement funds with board of trustees that are either appointed or elected. Whilst there's nothing wrong with the appointment or the election, and you do most of the time get highly professional and qualified people, but you do not get choice in terms of the skills mix. And a pension fund is a very complex entity. It requires different disciplines to be able to run efficiently. So if you don't get the skills mix correct, you need to find other ways in terms of how you then complement that structural deficiency. The governance challenge is, I think, again, as I've indicated, that whilst you then have these members, you then have to formulate certain committees. In fact, some boards of trustees don't even have subcommittees. Those that do, the issue is how effective are those committees. In particular here, the interest is with the audit committee. How do you make the audit committee effective? I think number one, there's got to be a clear mandate from the board to say we're setting up an audit committee and this is what it needs to do. So it needs to define that. Then the committee itself needs to have clear terms of reference. It needs to make sure that there's clear code of conduct. It needs to make sure that there's training and development that takes place to make sure that there is upskillment. It must do introspection and look at the skill set and say, do we need additional skills? And this is where there could be an opportunity to then go and engage on independent experts that could participate at committee level to assist the skills level and the diversity of the skills that are required at that committee, in the audit committee level. And then there's a whole lot of other things. We can't wish away service providers. They're an integral part of this process. So how do we hold them accountable? This is where the audit committee needs to play a crucial oversight role in making sure that the service level agreements that the fund enters into with the service providers are to the best interest of the fund and can hold the service providers to account as to what they are responsible for. The audit committee needs to do an evaluation exercise where firstly they understand the gaps that they have and how they want to fill those, but on an annual basis they need to do what is called a self-evaluation exercise. This is where they look at the plan for the previous year and see how they've performed against that plan. Where there's gaps, they then need to plan in terms of how to improve on those gaps. More importantly is the issue of time. A lot of people don't have time. You shouldn't accept the role of being in the audit committee, of being a trustee, if you cannot dedicate the necessary time. It's not only time for meetings, but in between meetings, you may need to educate yourself. You may need to engage on various issues in between the meetings to better equip yourself that at the next meeting you can make effective decisions. Accountability is important. The first step is to make sure that you know where to place the accountability. It's clear what the role of the audit committee is. It's clear what the role of the principal officer is. It's clear what the role of the service provider is. It's clear who's accountable for what and when. It must be clear where the cost breakdown in terms of what the fund is paying for. So that you can be able to hold people accountable. I think where the challenge is now is because this is a very complex industry. We cannot lie about it. It's complex. You deal with complex issues. When you talk about investments, looking after people's money, there's complex things that it would be impossible for the audit committee to be experts. So you need other people to help. The audit committee must have the ability to be able to source professional advice for itself. Where service providers are then providing a service, again, it must be very clear what the fund is paying for. What are the layers of costs that they are paying for? These must be unpacked so that performance can be measured against what is being paid for. There are Organizations like Batseta, which I represent, which is an organization for trustees and principal officers and funds who are best equipped to drive and coordinate such issues. There are other organizations like the Pension Lawyers Associations, there is the IRF. The problem again there is that all of these organizations seem to be acting in silos. They are not coordinating. I think all these organizations are driving towards a common goal. So the first issue is they must all come together. They can still remain independent, but come together and say, what are the common issues that we want to drive as an industry, and how can we work together to help each other to then do that? There are the bigger funds who have got more resources as well in terms of advancing some of these issues. They need to also help the smaller funds to make sure that they provide information, they provide training, they provide access, that if the smaller funds want to come and learn, because pension funds don't compete against each other, fortunately. So there is no competition, that there is intellectual issues of competition where, you know, they're giving one fund the upper hand as opposed to the other. But we are all in this game to make sure that we look after the members' interests. It is critical for the man in the street that such discussions take place, because more often than not, when you look at an average person, their biggest asset is their pension savings. Generally, the pension savings is even worth much more than your house. So it's critical that that is preserved, and that when people do retire, they can retire with dignity, they can be able to live a normal life, they don't have to suffer. So if these discussions are not taking place, then you will always see inefficiencies happening, you will always see costs going up, because again, in this game, to drive costs down is critical. Every rand that you waste, that is 1 rand straight out of someone's savings, lifetime savings. So it's critical to keep the cost down. It's critical to hold service providers to account, so that they can make sure that they act with diligence and they act in the best interest of the member at the end of the day. So it's important that we have a responsibility to protect the members, to preserve you know, the perception and the integrity of this industry.